Hello and thanks for joining us. This is Society Watch on Atlantic Television Network. You're wondering why is Flora laughing this morning. The backroom guys have a way of just keeping this program on with so much laughter, and of course just keep us going with the show. You know, that's why we're here. We'll pay attention to every details, every happenings in the society. Welcome to the show today. On the lineup, we'll take a look at employment and labor law. News has it that National Assembly workers under the auspices of the parliamentary staff of Nigeria has begun industrial action accompanying with picketing of the parliament. We ask, what is labor law? How does it protect the rights of employees and employers? And again, what necessitates industrial action? We'll be asking this question later on the show. Moving on, Nigerian Labour Congress to lawmakers. You can't gag workers. A bill meant to outlaw strikes and other industrial actions, particularly by health care workers, under the umbrella of Joint Health Sector Union, has received mixed reactions from stakeholders. We ask, is this bill solving issues of industrial action in the society, or is meant to stop the course of industrial action? And again, how should workers express their anger over unpleasant working conditions like poor remuneration, epileptic salary payment structures, and etc.? All of that questions my guests of the legal community and of course social analysts will be providing answers during the course of the show today. I'm Flora Duke. Society What begins after now. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Employment and labor law in perspective, rights of employers and employees. The economic labor force encapsulates the employers, employees, and the self-employed. These groups have their individual contribution to the labor force, and dispensing their duties, disagreement may arise, which causes dispute, but how this dispute is handled matters. In the news, National Assembly workers under the auspices of the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria has begun industrial action accompanying with picketing of the parliament. The workers are protesting against non-payment of backlog of arrears and allowances, among others. ATN News correspondent Ada Onaifowodo uncovered that the National Assembly and National Assembly Service Commission chapters of the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria held a joint Congress a few days ago in Abuja, where they resolved to down tools for 1 week before the lawmaker resumed in 18th of January 2022. Now, here's the report. I come back to the studio after now.
Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, PASAN, had in a communique issued after a joint Congress by staff of the National Assembly and the National Assembly Commission held in Abuja on the 6th of January 2022, accused the National Assembly management of breach of Memorandum of Understanding entered with PASAN on April 13, 2021, on the full implementation of the new National Minimum Wage Act 2019 and the reverse condition of service. In the communique, which was also transmitted to the Senate President, Senator Ahmed Lawal, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, the workers threatened to commence strike action from Monday, January 10, 2022, over the failure of the National Assembly management to pay their allowance arrears. The workers staged a peaceful protest to press home their demand, requesting in particular the payment of 8 months outstanding national minimum wage as well as 15 months peculiar allowance. The management of the National Assembly said the 2021 supplementary budget captures some of the demands by the association. The demands by the workers include immediate payment of 5 months outstanding balance of minimum wage, 2021 rent subsidy, 15 months arrears of peculiar allowances, 6 months arrears of hazard allowance to National Assembly staff. Others are the implementation of 50% balance of CONLES and the release of 2022 training templates for staff and evidence of provision of gratuity of retiring staff. Reporting for Atlantic Television Network, I am Ada Ona Ifodu.
The protest of Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria are venting their anger and grievances over on Saturday MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. But let me play you another video. This is the response of the National Assembly Commission. Let's get their response.
Members of the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, PASAN, were at the National Assembly Commission to protest the non-payment of allowances and arrears for 15 months, among other things. The workers had issued a notice on the strike, hinging it on Memorandum of Understanding signed in 2019. On Monday, the 10th of January, placards carrying protesters shut down all entrances to the National Assembly building, singing solidarity songs. They had sent a letter to the Department of State Service, DSS, and the Nigerian Police Force, notifying them of their intention to commence industrial strike and picket the federal lawmakers. National President of the association, Comrade Muhammad Usman, in his address disclosed their next line of actions if the leadership of the National Assembly failed to accede to their requests.
What we're going to do in the next 15 to 20 minutes. We assure you that we are coming back here. Be it sweet, salty, sour, we'll come in here and we'll reach a resolution together. What if it is sweet, we eat it here. If it is sour, bitter, we throw it back at them. So please give us the time to go and meet with them. So in the absence of anything, please, you will permit the leadership to go and have a meeting with the commission. Don't get back to you. Those in favor say aye.
The commissioner representing the South-South in the National Assembly Commission was on ground to address the aggrieved workers.
And I am here to prevail on you. Trust us as usual. Go back. You have not allowed me to finish. You don't know what we have in stock for you. If you know what we have in stock for you, you will stop wasting your energy. We are not your enemy. We are commissioners. We are here to protect your welfare. And that is why we have decided to summon this emergency meeting. People came from Enugu, people came from Asaba, people came from all over the country for this meeting this morning. So trust us. that we will come up with a very good resolution.
But effort to persuade the crowd by the representative fell on deaf ears.
Go back to your various offices, and your leadership will get in touch with you immediately after our meeting.
Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria had demanded the payment of backlog of allowance, arrears, as well as other benefits accrued to them by the management of the National Assembly and its commission. Reporting for Atlantic Television Network, I am Ada Ona Ifodu.
Thank you so much, Ada, for that well-encapsulated report there. Okay, with me in the studio is Barrister Asim Adams, who's a legal practitioner. Thanks for joining us on the show, Barrister Asim.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Next to him is Barrister Henry Ekene, is a National Legal Advisor Committee for the Defense of Human Rights. Thanks for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me here.
Via Zoom is a social-political commentator, Opunabo Inkotaria. Thanks for joining the show today, Opunabo.
Thank you, Flora. How are you?
I'm great. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Okay.
Happy New Year, my brothers in the studio.
Happy New Year to you, brother.
Let me start with you, Barrister Adams. Is it normal for employees to work and they are being owed arrears, backlog salary? Okay, let's just say a breach of MOU.
You see, it's not proper. Rather, it is diabolic and sheer wickedness for you to have workers who work for you, and at the end of the month you can't pay them. Even the Bible says, even though I'm not a student of Bible, but I know that the Bible says a worker deserves his wages. Yes, so if you, as an employer, decide not to pay your worker after he's worked for you for a period of time, then you are perpetuating wickedness in high place. And I describe it in that very harsh term, because the causal effect of that denial of payment of wages to any worker in your establishment has what they call ripple effect, because people depend on that worker for salary, to pay school fees, house rent, feeding, etc. So you are not just denying that particular worker, the opportunity to survive. You are trying to exterminate a clan. So I will stop at that point to say that it's sheer wickedness and a diabolic, orchestration.
Okay.
By those who want to do that.
I'm sure you've heard this response, but let's look at the current scenario in Nigeria. As dispute between employers and labor is like a culture in the country. Last year, August specifically, National Association of Resident Doctors embarked on strike. The strike actually lasted for 64 days. ASU, saying in 2021, embarked on a strike. Of course, there is, as we speak, another strike being threatened by the ASU community. I take you now to the most recent of war, is a warning strike issued by community of nurses and midwives in Lagos. Thankful enough for the spontaneous reaction of the governor of Lagos, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the midwife had to go back to work. He said they're going to look into their grievances. The thing is, now related to the current war, of course, I'm coming, please. Related, I'm hearing you. I'm coming. Allow me to just put a soft landing to all of you. Oh, we're having network challenge there. Opunabo, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, yes.
But can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
nation of strikes we've been having in this country, a bestiality, just like my brother in the studio, the first speaker said, as an employer. That is very force majeure. Can you hear me?
Yes, door is breaking.
Yes, but is it? Oh my God.
Okay, Opunapo, please, maybe you have to disconnect, then rejoin the meeting, then I'll come back to you.
I think it's from your end.
I could actually hear you clearly. So what you do, just disconnect and reconnect. Once I get a clear signal from the producers, I'll get back to you, please. Okay, the human rights person we have in the studio, Barrister Harry. I was actually going to ask about this question. Strike from ASU, NAD, midwifery, just recently in Lagos, the governor of the state had to say, go back to work, we'll look into the situation. And now, Parliamentary Staff Association, this is like the citadel of power, if I may say. Yes, they're almost like next to the powerhouse of the nation. Having their staff going on strike, before we start reading or what's the breach of a memorandum, what their demands rather, let's quickly look at this. Why do we keep having this as a recurring decimal in our society?
Well, let me start by first establishing the legal background to employer-employee relationship. It is a contract, and by virtue of being a contract, parties are involved. There are terms and conditions to every employment, and then it is expected that parties will abide by those terms. And one of the fundamental terms on the side of the employer is to pay wages, pay salaries and allowances, and also to provide work, provide the purpose for which the employee was engaged. On the other side of the employee, of course, is to do work and render the service. And when we have situations where it's become very consistent, that workers usually would keep on their side of the bargain by working, and then employers will fail substantially on the very fundamental condition of employment, which is to pay wages, then one would wonder what indeed the essence of that relationship, that contract will even be. It's a breach of contract, it's a breach of the rights of workers, because one of the fundamental rights of workers is also to be paid allowances and salaries and all of that. And then it's impunity, and then it's reckless. I don't know how else to describe, but just as my colleague here has actually described it, it's most unfortunate. And to put that more in context, is a situation where virtually all the sectors of an economy is having this same experience, especially even very sensitive sectors. Not that any one sector is subservient to another, but it is natural that some sectors are very sensitive. Health workers go on strike, lecturers, the academics, they go on strike, all kinds of workers in private sector, in public sector. It has become a character, and a very ugly one in Nigeria, that even in the private sector, you have situations where employers do not keep to the bargain, keep to the terms of the employment, keep to the conditions of the employment, and then they just arbitrarily violate those provisions of their employment. But I've always been worried. So what should the worker do? Yes, of course, one of the instruments of enforcement that the workers have always demonstrated in Nigeria is that of strike and all of that. I wonder whether there have been situations, and if the laws do not allow workers to actually even go to court to seek the enforcement of these rights where need be. But there are arrangements in the labor sector in terms of the conciliator arrangements, where the minister in charge of that ministry relevant to that, in this case, Minister for Labor, And then we do not have labor issues at the state level because it's in the exclusive list. So we do not have really Ministry of Labor at the state level in that regard. But we have the respective ministries and then the head of service to be able to enforce these rights of employees. But it's most unfortunate, the least I could say, and for us from the human rights background, it's a violation of the rights of employees.
Is
a whole lot of
anything
their rights
that
actually
should
being
necessitate an employer going against the bargain?
whatever excuses the employer would have, it will be unjustifiable, really, because if you are confronted with those challenges that I would probably be tempted to excuse them, then you should have a reasonable engagement with your employees. And sometimes they may give the responsible excuses as to maybe the economy of the employer, let's say private sector. If that particular sector is affected in some way, that because it's a responsibility, no doubt, but there could be challenges that may not be envisaged, that may arise, that may make your employer unable to pay you or to also continue, even if they are going to be able to pay, but to continue to remain on that scale of pay, for instance. Then you have to go into bargain and into some kind of arrangement. And that's why there is collective bargaining as a concept in the labor relations, really. So you get both parties, because it's a contract. We can actually even seek to review contracts, right? Even the Labor Act, which is the primary legal instrument regulating employment in Nigeria, labor issues in Nigeria, amongst the other numerous laws in the sector, provides a situation where the employer can actually vary terms of the employment, as part of which can also be in respect to allowances and benefits, because Section 7 of the Labor Act precisely requires that every employer should issue a written contract of employment to the employee. That's what you call a letter of engagement or letter of employment. And then, of course, the terms would be in that, apart from the implied terms, but the express terms would be on that, in that letter of employment. But that same Section 7 sub 2, A and B, gives situations where the employer may justifiably vary some of these terms. So if there are reasons, reasonable and legitimate reasons that are acceptable, that may justify any variation of any of those terms, just like any other term in any contract, get the parties collectively involved, and then sit down and negotiate and review those issues and see whether they are acceptable, and collective bargaining
When do you get the party involved? Vice Adams, I'll come to you shortly, please.
No problem, it's not.
When do you get the party involved?
That's why.
Before or during?
It's before, certainly before. It doesn't. We don't even have to reason that. If it is not before, then you would have done, and then you tell them. That part of the Section 7, 2A and B that even gives the opening for it. There's a condition to it that you must bring it to the notice of the employee within the time that it's being done. So it is even more reasonable that you get. I kept talking about collective bargaining, meaning that it has to be collective. It has to be an engagement between the employers and the employees, and that's the reason. That's the reason that the labor laws also allow that employees should organize themselves. They have the right to so do, so that when these kind of situations arise, then they could have their groups or their unions or their organizations or their associations in a representative capacity, as the case may be, to get into this engagement and discussion with the employer. And then so you come out with some situation, well, a situation where we do not see that happen, and then we're not even talking about any variation really, but an apparent disregard to the terms and conditions of employment, an apparent breach of contract of employment between the employer and the employee, where you either fail to pay 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, until 15 months, you haven't paid an employee, and then he's working. It's a breach of that contract.
Okay, but Barrister Adams, why is it always that the first move by employers is to tell employees, go back to work, we'll look into it? Of course, you heard from the National Assembly Commission there. He said, go back to work, we're on top of it. And Babajide Sanwo-Olu told the midwife and nurses in Lagos, go back to work, I will jump on top of the matter. Resident doctors in Imo State have been on 18-month strike, which they just cut off. and the governor said, go back to work. Why is that statement always the first statement? When what ought to be, like he said, that was why I had to ask him that question. At what point should you have this conversation when you know something is actually going wrong, which somewhat we automatically breach the MOU? Why not have that conversation? Why wait for that dispute? Why wait for picketing? Why wait for them to openly show their grievances before you're not saying go back to work?
It is very, very clear that in the pyramid, of labor, especially in Nigeria here, we still practice that medieval, contraption, where you have the feudal lords. You have the feudal lords at the apex of the pyramid. Then you have the proletariats at the base of the, the pyramid. And the feudal lords who see themselves as dukes and czars, who see themselves as a numero uno, and see themselves as we normally call them Oga. The word Oga has placed a burden and a divide between those at the top and those who work for you. So the feudal lords see the proletariats as people that they can control at their whims and caprices. You see, the workers, especially in Nigeria, let me just put it, Nigerian workers, are handicapped. They are emasculated by circumstances and poverty. And you find that even the collective...
Should employers
yes,
take advantage of that?
That is what we are talking about. You see, the nuances, the shenanigans of the feudal lords of old. That is why I use that pyramid as an example, because the feudal lords of old, felt that they were all in all. And those below them, they can control them, they can sack, employ, fire, do whatever they like to them. That they are servants, to them. So they can decide to do anything with them because they feel that those people are toys, that they can play with at any time. So that is why you find out that an Oga who is in a National Assembly, civil service, will wait till everything is destroyed before they can begin to come and begin to tell them that, okay, we are looking at this issue or whatever. Whereas you find that within the workers' union there, they have raised alarm. They have raised alarm and told them, look, Oga, you are owing us some money. You are not, the benefits you are supposed to, get from this collective bargaining agreement. You have breached it. Can't you do something about it? They will just wave them off with a wave of hand. So the only time they will listen is when they come out to picket or they come out to, demonstrate or go on strike. That is when they come. And you find that when this, negotiation has broken down, the workers do not even have faith in the Ogas any longer, as it used to be before now. So whatever you are telling them is it's going to go through this year and go out from the other side, as the case may be. So that is where the problem has been, largely. Now, what we need to do is this. I think we have to make a law in this country. The National Assembly has to do something.
Who makes the law?
The National Assembly should do that.
Who is to pay this?
No. What I'm trying to say is that there should be a bill. We have been proposing a bill to that nature. That, look, we mustn't, accumulate, wages for a month to now pay workers, because it's becoming difficult for some companies, especially at this point in time. You find that in the civilized climes, people, you can be employed for an hourly basis, weekly basis, etc. It reduces the burden on the employer in terms of payment of wages. But when you begin to accumulate wages for 30 days on end, and at the end of the day, you are not able to meet up, at that end of that 30 days, it becomes a problem. Now, what happens is this. In some offices like the civil service, for instance, why don't we have a law that we kind of segment this work arrangement? That, okay, hourly basis, it depends on how many hours you put in, that we pay you. So if you are not going to come to work tomorrow, we strike you off the list. Those who are coming, we know that we're taking care of them. That will reduce the bill burden on the employers, as the case may be. That is what we have been advocating. Because we have to look at situations that are going on right now. Now, in the private sector, it's been hit, really by the COVID-19 and whatever that we are having. Economic, hardship, etc., in terms of production and all this, whatever. So the companies and the employers are having serious problems right now. So they cannot even get their overheads together, talk less of people paying, salaries at the end of the month. The only option they may have is to reduce or downsize, as the case may be. And if you downsize, you are creating more unemployment in the society. So there should be a leeway where these two parties, should work, something that will work out for them. That is why the CBA is there, collective bargaining agreement. But you find out that at the end of the day, because of our mentality, the Nigerian mentality, the oga at the top, when he has the money, what he does is to go and embezzle the money, corruptly enrich himself, goes out and they embezzle the money that used to pay the workers. At the end of the day, when he gets returned, they're supposed to pay those workers. They will tell you there's no money, whereas money has been budgeted for the payment of salaries. But where has the money gone to? Maybe somebody has taken that money to keep in one bank account, yielding interest for him. Then he will now come tomorrow after getting the interest to now suffer them and bring the money for them to pay. These are issues that we need to tackle at the end of the day, so that workers will not begin to suffer unnecessarily in Nigeria.
Okay, now let's quickly run through the demands of the Parliamentary Staff Association. First of all, 18 months of standing national minimum wage, 15 months area peculiar allowance, 5 months of standing balanced minimum wage, 2021 rent subsidy, 6 months areas hazard allowance. Now, the thing is, looking at all of these time, 8 months, 15 months, 6 months, within all of this period, what does the law say concerning maybe right to putting more effort or carrying out your duty, your official duty? You're being on all of these. Are you supposed to go to work, Barrister Henry?
Yes, like I said, the employment being a contract, and parties are expected to perform their part of the contract, that the other party is committing a breach. You have two options. You have an option either to seek redress, and where if you have the opportunity to seize that performance of your contract. But when it comes to employment, there is a slight difference, really, because your contract isn't such that it is within a short time between now and tomorrow, or as you could engage someone to probably push a cart for you or to clear a lawn for you and all that. Now, take the public servant, for instance. You are engaged to work, all things being equal, for 35 years, and then, or 30 years as the case may be, or beyond, and then for retirement. So is employment described with statutory flavor? Okay. It has that term. Now that the employer, which is the state, is failing to pay you a particular month's salary, does not mean that you then can terminate the contract. And at whose instance, really? So that's why you could see situations where, even in the private sector, where you probably keep working even when you're being owed. But your right to payment, of course, arises at the time you are owed. So if there's any cause of action, it has become due at the time you're owed. But whether you're working on...
How do you react when you can easily...
No, of course, you demand. And that's what has been happening. No, not civil disobedience. You have actually stated it, that you believe, and I believe, that the unions or the groups of these employees may have actually made these demands earlier. And then when you demand, it is expected that you pay. Right? Now, when for whatever reason, which some of the, even you alluded to COVID-19, he did, and then some of other challenges and all that. Let us not forget that statutory employment or those public service employment, my worry really is that these things are budgeted for. And then it's always known in Nigeria that the recurrent part of the budget is almost 100% every year performed in terms of budgetary performance. And so one will imagine, so if it is recurrent and those are the allowances and payment of salaries and probably other overheads. So how are we getting this situation that people are not being paid? I don't want to go on the other aspect of, so who is responsible? Is that corruption and all that? But for the right of the employee, you are entitled to be paid that money at that time. But my worry is, what happens when the money that is due me that you have to pay me this month, and then you didn't pay, and 5 months after you want to pay me, you pay me the same amount of money. I think that's an aspect that we probably will look at for probably a legislation. Because if in other situations of debt, right, and you want to seek redress in court to ask that money that was due to be paid to you, maybe from contract or whatever thing, and then that this money was due in November of 2021, last year, and then I made demand for it to be paid and then you didn't pay. If I'm seeking redress in court, I will of course ask the court to order that some level of interest be paid on that money from that time it became due and until when you're actually going to give to me, or even until when judgment is entered that you must give to me, and until when it's been... Yes. That's, like I said, that's the procedure for any other thing about debt. So it may be an advocacy really now that can we have to put a check on, because there's in statutory employment, there is certainly some definite responsibility and failure on side of employers, right? Where, like I said, politicians or government may want to probably, there are stories we hear, somebody responsible somewhere may take this money and probably multiply it in terms of some other ways, or just impunity, and there's no punishment. After all of these protests and all of that, even when they get into this meeting with the commission and all of that, and the result that they're going to pay them, they will pay them still what they probably are supposed to pay them. If we have a responsibility that if you fail to pay this money when it's due to be paid, and you're later going to pay these workers, you pay with some interest, maybe some persons will sit down, sit up somewhere. Since that is allowed in other areas of demanding for entitlements or for damages,
but the thing is
there should be
not being known by employees.
No, but it's not actually not the situation at the moment. It's not the situation at the moment. When it comes to failure to pay salaries and allowances, there is no law, there is no situation that if you're going to pay later, that you must pay some interest or some penalty on default. That's why the advocacy for reviews of some of our laws or bringing some things into our laws, if they will check some of these kind of excesses and behaviors and inadequacies of public officers, maybe we need to include that.
You know that to even add to what he's saying, to what my
but we need to go to the next topic.
It's okay. Well, just to add to what my colleague has said is this. You see, this the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, has muzzled, the workers to the extent that, because in that CBA and their work agreement that they are given, terms are spelled out that, for instance, if the company encounters what they call force majeure, which is not, and force majeure is not described in that particular agreement, that when the company encounters a situation of a force majeure, that they are unable to pay, salaries, etc., you cannot, take them to court. So that was muzzled and stifled the rights of workers to, when you are being owed about 5 months, 6 months, you don't have any option than to just remain there and sit down, tanda, as you normally use the street language, tanda there, then you wait. And when they want to pay you, they still pay you that 6 months. Nothing is added to it. Meanwhile, you've gone out to borrow money to augment and do some other things. Nothing is given to you. I've advised some clients. When I met them, I asked them, I said, look, we can challenge this collective bargaining agreement and your terms and your contract of work, because it runs ingrained against the fundamental rights of your person as a worker, even though it is not, particularly and succinctly enshrined in the Nigerian Labour Act or in the Constitution of the rights of workers to, take their companies or whatever agencies to court when they are owing them. We can test run it. If we test run and the court says we can go back, no problem. Why for JSC, retired of as it then was, one said that collective bargaining agreement, between workers and the employers, is sacrosanct. And if you cannot, adhere to the terms and conditions that are laid down there, then the worker has no right other than to, approach the courts, to get his, benefits and rights that are accruing based on that collective bargaining. For instance, you cannot tell me that you have what they call force majeure. Force majeure has not been, defined, and they are telling you that force majeure means that COVID-19, is an instrument of force majeure, or there was fire, or economic downturn in the nation affected their production, etc. So because of that, they cannot pay. And now, when they go and begin to agitate for them to pay, you know what they do? They now threaten them that, okay, what is going to happen is that if you don't want to wait for us to pay you the 5 months salary, then we are going to relieve you of your duties. And when they threaten them And because of insecurity of jobs outside, job insecurity, people begin to kowtow and begin to lick the boots of their employers and say, okay, let me kuku stay here. I know that they are owing me. At all, I bad. Hunger when get hope, you know, the key person. You know, when they use those kind of things, the person will sit down there and the boss at the top will begin to do what now? Begin to gladiate and begin to run around and, you know, like and treat them the way he wants to do. So these are things. Let us go to the industrial court. I've told them, I said, because laws can also be made by the courts. You know, precedent can be set by the courts. But there's no single person. I've tried it a number of times. Okay. You have your CBA, you have your work agreement, etc. Even the oil companies, they say they have their rules, or whatever they call it there. Which they give 3 documents they give to them. And those documents, you have to abide by them. And those documents are skewed. Yes, yes. And the documents are skewed against the workers.
Right, sir,
yes, so thank you very much. So,
take a short break. We'll look
that's
at
right.
the bill to stop strike and industrial action. What's the implication of this bill on civil workers if this bill becomes the law in Nigeria? Quite an interesting topic today. But we'll go on the break. We'll be right back to stay with us. Welcome back. A bill to stop strike and industrial action underway. What is the implication of this bill if passed into law on civil servants? From time immemorial, no concrete statistics on the issue of salary delay in Nigeria. It is not uncommon for employees in the public sector to be owned their salaries by the government. Thousands of school teachers, nurses, and other civil servants are forced to turn to other private means of earning a living to survive, doing everything from taxi driving to petty trading. This ends up leaving many state-run schools and hospitals without qualified professionals in attendance, what in turn makes parents and patients turn to private institutions they can barely afford. What form of policy will be enacted to improve staff welfare and enhance potentials? In the news, the Nigerian Labour Congress has advised members of the National Assembly, particularly members of the House of Representatives, to drop their proposed bill that was meant to outlaw strikes and other industrial actions, particularly by healthcare workers under the umbrella of Health Sector Union. A member of the House of Representatives from Enugu State, Simia Atike, had championed a bill titled An Act to Amend Trade Disputes Act Cap T8 Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, meant to prohibit a medical practitioner in the employment of federal, state and local government in the essential service sector from embarking on strike. The bill was also meant to accelerate administrative and judicial proceedings and the determination of trade disputes involving them and related matters. NLC said the move was a deliberate attempt to gag the workers and legally weaken their strength so they can lose legal backing to pursue their legitimate rights, which mostly come from strikes and other industrial actions, and they won't accept it. NLC President Ayuba Waba, who addressed journalists in Abuja on the proposed bill, said the Nigerian workers would not accept the bill and would use all available means and strength to stop it. Waba said the proposed bill was an outright violation of the fundamental human rights of workers and also a violation of some sectors of the International Labour Organization Convention, particularly on the freedom of association with Nigeria is a signatory, which Nigeria is a signatory to, I beg your pardon. The NLC president disregarded with the plan to categorize health workers under JUS as essential service providers by the bill. Hence, they won't be entitled to strike. He thereby made reference to some section of the International Labour Organization document, particularly on freedom of association, which only recognize air traffic controllers as essential worker. Now, I think I will end the read up there. Let me come back to Barrister Henry. The bill meant to outlaw strike and industrial action. Let me get your station on these. We just talk about industrial action strike, which you earlier said these are rights and of course encapsulated in the labor law. But why is another bill coming to surmount what is already in the labor law?
You see, it's really unfortunate when we hear these kind of things come from government or from people who are ordinarily expected to make laws for better governance, make laws for improvement in areas that I've always said that we can actually address a lot of the problems and challenges we have by lawmaking, legislating. So for me, it's a no-no. And how is it a no-no? So I don't just say it. Let's begin with unionizing, really. Section 40 of the Constitution, which is about the right to associate, freely associate. Specifically, it's not just about making it a blanket right. Trade union, there is a right to join trade unions. And one of the reasons for joining trade unions or forming trade unions is for the interest of members, to protect the interest of members. And how do trade unions or trade associations express themselves? It is by these instruments. Even the International Labour Organization, it is allowed. The question would have been, at what time is it being applied? And the procedure for it. So at best, if we are going to have a labor law or a trade union act, which we have, it is about how and when should these instruments of expression be employed, not to outlaw, and they cannot. That piece of legislation, if made at all and challenged before the courts, will be unconstitutional, will be unlawful in itself, will not be valid. So that, for me, is already what is awaiting, if at all is going to be presented as a bill before the National Assembly for consideration. Why? Like I said, trade unions are allowed in the Constitution to be formed and for workers to belong to those trade unions. We have the Trade Union Act already in this country that also makes procedures and provisions as to the formation of trade unions and, of course, as to membership of trade unions by workers. And then even how that is the platform. It's just like gagging also the media for people not to talk, and then you say the media, people shouldn't talk. The same way, the platform from which employees will speak and express their opinion and make their demands is the trade union. And then one of the ways of doing so is by protest. And protest here is by demand. Protest is a demand, really. It's a demand of a position. What I call a strike. So why would you make a law to restrain people from speaking, from expressing themselves? And these are different ways of expressing yourself. You may have made a demand, and the trade unions usually, generally, would have made a demand. And when that demand has not been met, then they come out and say, okay, since you haven't yielded to this demand and you've not kept to your own part of the bargain, that this is the way we'll express our own reaction. And then you say you want to outlaw that kind of reaction. And what is strike, by the way? It is legitimate. It's to seize, like the question you even asked earlier, what should the workers do when they've worked and then they've not been paid? Can you really have a right to seize to provide the service? Yes, you really can have the right to seize to provide the service. It's legitimate, it's reasonable, and it's responsible. I have not terminated the contract or the agreement we have with you, but the fact that you haven't paid, even in contract of sales, you haven't paid, so I won't supply you more until you pay. Then I make more supplies. And in this case, the contract remains. Even in employment, the employment contract subsists. But let's talk. And then, okay, why? That means you're showing that you're high-handed. You're on the other side, you're on top. Yes, even if the employer-employee relationship has that kind of, not quite a master-servant as it is, because it's a contract of two parties. But then there are rights and powers of the employer, the same way there are rights of the employee. So if you want to exercise any of those your powers, either to terminate the contract, then you must do so also within the law, as required by law, complying with law. Then I have the right to also make my own, exercise my own powers.
Barrister Adams,
Yes.
Let's look at the other side of the coin. We're making law to outlaw strike and industrial action. Why are we not addressing the root cause of strike and industrial action?
Excellent.
Well, that is the irony of life. and the irony of the Nigerian situation, for instance. You see, because you don't want people to cry when you beat them. That has been an aberration. So I don't know what else and how we are going to talk to them again. We have asked them, put properties in place, do the needful in agreement with what you have already signed and the reason why you requested for workers to come and work for you. These are very simple things. Nobody forced you to employ. So you should also have that ability to, pay your workers. Because what gives rise to strikes and, distress in a labor place is a non-payment of wages and benefits accruing to workers who have worked for you. No worker will go there and demand for advance payment when he knows he has not worked for you. He will only beg you to say, please, can you help me? So nobody will go there. So what they are even clamoring for is an arrears of, a payment of their wages. Like I said earlier, it is sheer wickedness and diabolic, representation that has made man, or the Nigerian man or the Nigerian Oga to be in that kind of situation where he wants to perpetuate himself, and deal with those who are below him. So now, if you look at it, even like my brother said, my colleague said that Section 40, if you add Section 39 of the Constitution to it, right to expression, because strike is a form of expression. You want to express your views to your, your employer. So you add Section 39 to that, you find that you have that right. So nobody can foreclose the right. And I look at the bill that is being proposed. It's even particularizing the medical, stuff. For me, that is what we refer to as ad hominem response. Ad hominem response is a law that is being, enacted to gag a certain section or a section of the society or directed at a particular, section of the society. Why should he choose out the medical doctors or health workers as the case may be? He will say they are doing what? Essential services. Is it not true? Now, if you are doing essential services, you have to get what they call essential pay and benefits. Like the footballers. If you look at the footballers today, when the people were clamoring, say, how do you not pay a man £1 million just to kick a ladder? Then you know what John Fashanu said? He said, yes, if you receive crazy wages, then you should do crazy jobs.
Crazy things.
Crazy things. That is why you find that footballers don't complain. They will play Nations Cup today, they play League tomorrow, they play this, they break their leg, they still come back to that because of what they are getting. So if the workers are doing essential work, what they need is essential pay that will take them far and above other people. People will want to clamor, to come and work there. In those days, you find that people were, those of us who were in the school in those days, as we were leaving the university, we say, want to work in Shell. We never knew that Shell can only accommodate 1,000 people. We thought that Shell will accommodate anybody that comes out from school. So, and we were looking at Shell because of their mode of payment, the benefits people accrue to them. That is the reason why we are clamoring to be there, as the case may be. So, in this case, I don't know why it's like that. But lastly, what I want to say is this. It is corruption. It is corruption that will make a federal or state agency not to pay its workers. It is sheer greed, corruption, and wickedness that will make a state agency or a ministry not to pay its workers. Because before the year starts, budget, these things have been budgeted for, salaries have been budgeted for, and they have given you the money to pay them. So I don't know why they are holding it back. It's sheer wickedness, as the case may be.
Concluding thought on this, you see this bill scaling through a first, second reading or getting support.
Well, it will be an unfortunate one. It will be a bad law. Flora, laws may be made, but they could be evaluated as being bad or good laws. So sometimes you actually can have a bad law. So if it eventually goes through the National Assembly, we don't have the powers to making laws, even if we elected them, but it will turn out to be a bad law. So but for me, I think it shouldn't be one of those that should even go through. There should be other ways.
Is it meant to gag their mouth?
Yes, certainly that's what they have said. Section 39 is about the freedom of expression. And we have said that these are strategies for employees to express themselves, and they have the right to so do. If you think that the health sector is a sensitive, I agree with this new nomenclature of sensitive pay, then make them sensitive pay. So if it's a sensitive sector, regulate in such a way that they should not be going on strike. Why not also pay them from the consolidated revenue fund? If it is so important, like the judges and all of those. It draws from source, from the consolidated revenue
time is
fund.
up. Thank you so much, Barrister Henry Ekene, National Legal Advisor Committee for the Defense of Human Rights. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Barrister Adams Assem, for your time on the show.
Thank you for inviting me and for having us today.
And this is Well Capital for the Program Society Awards today. We always have our eyes on lenses, our cameras, and all of the happenings in the society. Well, join us on Facebook and YouTube. Go like our page, comment, and drop something there. I want to connect with you via that medium. The handle is Atlantic Television Network. On Instagram is Atlantic TV Network. Stay safe. Bye for now.